down to find the origin of tonight's topic with this nerd. I just made that
Nerd,
up.
Nerdarchy Ted, how are you doing this fine and lovely evening, sir?
Hey, it's Monday. I'm doing
Uh,
okay.
I'm sorry that you're having one of those Mondays.
Yeah, it happens. But we get to talk about nerdy stuff here, so
what
my
was the name of that cat who loved lasagna?
Garfield. Yes, he hated Mondays.
He hated Mondays.
Yes.
I on the other hand, I'm doing pretty good. It's the first Monday of the month, so people know what that means. So I've got some talking points and some things to discuss,
cool.
Things to kind of show off and talk about things that will be coming in future articles, as well as some things going to the giveaway pile. But as you said, we're talking about origins tonight, and
yes,
that to me this is the absolute foundation of characters. And whether you're talking about the origin story of a superhero, or kind of more like, well, what is the origin of this character's path, kind of a ye old background kind of scenario. There's definitely a lot of things that can be talked about with the nuts and bolts there.
Yeah, I threw this topic out there a while ago, and it's funny because at the time I was like, oh yeah, I had like an idea, like things that that gave me that idea for that topic. And today I was like, what were they? I don't remember. But they certainly had to do with those sorts of things as well, like character origins and stuff too. I find that stuff fascinating, and it's super helpful as a role player.
So what I think a lot of people don't look at is the origin of your BBEG.
That's an interesting. Yeah, that's a great. Those
are the things that people don't really get into. And I happen to be watching, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. I watched season 2. Actually, just finished up watching that yesterday, and it was one of those things. Is like the way those characters interact, they've revived and rewrote some of the characters for this newer edition, did a little bit of gender bending and rewrites, and I love what they did with something that was for me very iconic part of my childhood.
Sure.
But there was an episode where, like, I'm not gonna try not to spoil it, but a villain and a hero were almost forced into like a standoff. And they're like, okay, this episode is all about these two interacting. And it wasn't, oh, well, this is just going to be bloody conflict. And I'm like, man, this is cool. And that particular show really has a good origin story for your villain, and all of the how-tos and the wheres of how they all interconnect. And I'm like, man, this is really well put together, and really useful if you're going to kind of extrapolate and put those points into an RPG story.
Yeah, that's a great point of thinking, like, where your villains come from. Because for a GM, it's the same as the players, where it's like it informs how you play them when they come up. When they're present in the scenario.
Depending upon how you write a game, sometimes there might never be an interaction between who the big bad is and the players until final contact.
Yeah,
my Curse of Narcitus game, it was all through minions, agents, what have you. There was no direct contact until they were in the hells. They were dropped right into his lair, and boom, they're gonna have a fight. It was awesome. Mm-hmm. But I've kind of learned since then that it's a lot more fun to kind of have means of interaction in some way, shape, or form between that, that mindset, that character, and the players. So I with the campaigns that came after that, I tried to have that.
But and those can be fertile grounds for adventures too. So one of my favorite TV shows is Hannibal.
Sure.
Hannibal Lecter. And it's like before he was captured, so like none of the characters on the show know that he's a murderer and all that stuff. And so he's friends with them and stuff. Like he works with the FBI. You as the viewer know that he's bad. Right. But in the third season, he's on the run and stuff. And the protagonist, it's obviously a real psychological show because Hannibal's psychologist and all that stuff. But a big part of the third season is the protagonist sort of like trying to understand who he is in order to thwart him. So it's like he sort of goes through Hannibal's origins to understand, like he goes back to, Castle Lecter and, just investigates like all the places he was before he became like the Chesapeake Ripper and killer and all that stuff. And I thought, that's really interesting way to, not it could make you sympathize with the villain, but also just like understand them and maybe find the means to defeat them too. Like, but just like, well, let's go back to where they came from and see how they got to the point they are now. And maybe we can find some way to overcome them or just get some leverage or whatever.
Right.
So I thought that was really interesting.
And that was kind of the direction that I was looking at.
Oh, really? Oh, cool.
It's okay. If like as the writer, the DM, the game master, whatever you want to call it, if you know who that character is and how they come about, you've got the ability to make them a little bit more human or a little bit more
relatable.
Yeah. And it's not just here's this thing. And like even something like Hannibal Lecter or with, Skeletor, there is a person there beyond the evil that they're doing. And having that thing to evoke, having that thing to interact with, that's like, okay, cool. So like you can have these moments that are like, all right, well, we're going to have this back and forth. And maybe it presents a weakness. Maybe you present an opportunity, as you brought up, to learn something about them that tells of something to come. So like,
it just kind of changes the stakes, right, for the whole group. You know what I mean? Because like, obviously everybody likes to throw down with the big bad and kick their butt in combat and everything, which is totally fine. But maybe you resolve your campaign a different way where it's like you still defeat them by like, getting them to change their ways or whatever. I mean, there's a million ways you could go with it, but and they're all just as interesting as like, kicking their butt.
And that was the next point I had on.
Oh, sorry. We're on the same vibe tonight.
No. I mean, that's completely awesome. As I mentioned, I just finished watching The Flash. I think I talked about it last week.
Great example.
Throughout the entire 7 seasons of that television show, like it's all about Barry, like invoking the heart of the adversary to be like, no, don't be a bad guy, make a change, what have you. Like, it's not all about, can I just pummel you into prison? So like those kinds of things, if you're into I don't want to just combat the thing to death, perhaps you are literally up against something that is so much more powerful than you. In the ways, many times in The Flash, it kind of is. It's a scenario of like, look, you've got to appeal to them, say the right thing, do the emotional deal, and make it happen. And those are the kind of things that are drastically different style of game. Yes, you're still achieving victory through rolling dice of, persuasion, deception, insight, what have you. Could feel kind of like a skill challenge or a combat. But it's a different way. You're not dealing damage to make the outcome you're looking for.
The Flash is a really neat example too, because at least one of his villains in the comics and on the show, their origin was caused by him. Like, right? I mean, I don't think it's a spoiler to say like Barry Allen wants to go back and save his mom from dying, right? It's like by doing that creates the origin for at least one of his villains.
Yeah. There's a number of characters that accidentally get powers and what have you because of his actions. And those are
like really cool, like mid to late campaign things for characters to learn too. Not so much like in a like a haha gotcha, your heroes are the ones that caused the problem sort of thing, but it can add just another layer to it where it's just like, oh man, like this is like cause they're related to something we did or whatever.
Yeah, if you've got the ability to kind of tie in character stories into a villain story, it's a lot of fun. My Curse of Zoltan, my first 2 games were Curse of, get used to it.
Oh yeah, that's a great example too.
Curse of Zoltan, they literally wrote the bad guy.
Yeah.
like I had an idea of what I wanted to do, and they just is like, okay, well, we're gonna go hunt a mage. Okay, well, I had a mage as my backdrop that I wanted to use, so I'm like, all right, I'm gonna use their character is my character, and he totally did the whole, Scooby Doo thing of, oh crap, I had a powerful wizard, high enough level that he could have just wiped the floor with them, but he wasn't ready for combat, so he pretty much, I'm gonna GTFO rather than fight.
That's a really cool setup.
So like they told me the story and the wizard got away. So they had no idea what I was writing, but they foiled this guy's plan, which meant they hated the wizard and the wizard hated him. Signed, sealed, delivered as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, and that's a great example of like origins on several levels, and even in the sense of like, a session 0 is sort of the origin of your campaign, and a lot of people do their session 0s differently and look for different things, but the way we usually do it is just like figuring out some group dynamics, what kind of game you want to play, what sort of activities you want to do. And that's been a tremendously huge help in all the games that we've played on their Tuesday night games and my home games and everything. Of just having some kind of background details before you get started makes a tremendous difference.
As long as you are dealing with people who have the ability to understand the rationale of the possibilities and can communicate with each other, session 0 is absolutely gold and worth its weight in such to have it done. I don't do a session 0 with my kids' game because they don't fully understand all of the options. Heck, my daughter still doesn't understand the ramifications of character choice. There's times that she just was like, all right, I'm not really into what's going on at the moment, so I'm just gonna kind of sign off. So times like she'll leave the table or
oh really?
But I mean, she's 10.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
This was while she was like 7 and 8. So like she's been gaming for many years. And that's a perfect transition into that particular game. And I've got a cool origin story for my characters.
Oh, cool. Didn't you just start a new campaign with those
we're just getting ready to start. My kids made their characters yesterday. They had the ideas of what they wanted to play, and I actually already have their 3D design colored and printed.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Show up, so they're over there on the shelf ready to go.
And they won the jackpot with gaming dads on that. I'm interested in that stuff.
Well, I mean, to me, it's they made some interesting characters. So like, I'm like, look, I'll buy them, but they're gonna live here with the other Hero Forges, so they don't get messed up. But my son had heard about all the different things that we talk about here and there, and he decided he wanted to play a tank. And not much tankier than a Warforged Paladin, and he fully plans on at 4th level taking Magic Initiate to get shield.
Nice.
We're starting a campaign at level 3. And when I put the character together yesterday, he's got an AC 20, and he's like, couldn't give me one more level. But
it's like, hey kid, you're 3rd level, you got AC 20, you're good.
So when he put that character, idea together, that kind
fighter
of paladin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's looking to go, heavy on the tank and
nice,
fairly heavy on the damage. So
I love playing tanks, man.
Yeah, it can be a lot of fun, and he's already gloating. And I'll get into the origin aspect, and I'll get into it real quick. You've already been shared this, but my
stats. Yeah.
My daughter did her character first, and she chose to just do the basic stat array. Took wizard and did not put them in the the directions that I thought she was going to do. She's still pretty smart, but she didn't put her highest in intelligence. So it's like, okay, that's you want to go for it. But she's got some pretty weird things. But given her, she's like, I'm dumping wisdom because she's 10. She makes a lot of.
That's pretty wise thing to do, though. Just oddly enough.
But when I was going through it with my son, I'm like, okay, the standard array, is this, or you can roll. And he's like, well, how, what do you do for rolling? But I explained the rolling method.
What'd you do? 46, drop the
46,
lowest?
drop the lowest, and then, assign them as you see fit. And because that's what I've been using for a long time. I could go back to the,
It's a good method.
the Nerdarchy method of long old, which is 3d6 ones or sixes. But when we do that, usually it's you leave them where they lie.
Mm-hmm.
So like that becomes a little bit more tricky to play what you want. And so he goes into my dice stash because for whatever reason, he didn't want to use his dice. And he pulls out 46 and 40/20. He's like, I don't know which one I'm using. I'm like, dear Lord, I just told you what to get. 20/20 aside. And he drops the dice. We set the low one aside. First roll of a 15. And I'm like, okay, you're already doing good.
Mm-hmm.
Then he got a 15. Then he got a 15. I'm like, holy crap. This is just knuck and futz here. It doesn't matter. Like, if he rolls 3 8s, that would be like, your high and your low on the 27 point buy. But all he's got to do is like roll, something above that, and he's already, above. So then he drops a 14. I'm like, holy crap. He now has everything he needs in really high stats for a decent paladin.
Yeah.
Then he drops a 16.
He could play a first edition paladin with those stats almost.
then he dropped. Oh, this is again before modifiers. So.
Oh yeah. Wow, I didn't even think of that.
Then he drops the 16, and I'm like, are you kidding me? And then he drops a 13 at the end. So his lowest roll is a 13.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh God. So he put his 16 in the Constitution. So he's starting off with an 18 con.
Good.
I'm like, man, this guy is gonna be a beast to deal with.
Well, hopefully, ideally, like when I play a tank, I look at that as just like I could just throw myself into danger willy-nilly, which you play with me, I do that anyway. So it's like if I go out of my way to make the guy tough, like you better believe I'm gonna be like, sure, put me in the front, hit me, come at me, bro. I will defend the party.
So the cool origin story, beyond this type of character, Teddy starts coming up with the idea for this Warforged Paladin, aside from any other talk with anyone else in the group. My friend and his son, Teddy's friend, start coming up with their characters on the side.
Mm-hmm.
And I get contacted, and it's like, all right, the son wants to make an artificer, and the dad wants
to complicated class.
Yeah, but the kid's smart enough to be able to.
I didn't mean, I just meant there's a lot of, they have so many things going on. When I play, I was like, man, you get like just so many things you have.
So he decides like, all right, the dad wants to play a Warforged barbarian. And the story they come up with is the artificer made the Warforge.
Oh, that's cool. And
I'm like, all right, that's cool. Here's this other conundrum. Warforged are not going to be a super uncommon or super rare kind of thing in the world, but making your own is kind of an interesting thought. So in order to kind of make it a little bit more, interesting, I'm like, well, what do you want to do about my son's character who's also wanting to play a Warforged? Is he his own story, or is he attached over here? So when they were aware that Teddy wanted to go paladin, and the kid hasn't really made a whole lot of religious type characters, he's like, well, maybe this dude is not into the whole religion, and Teddy was too spiritual for him. That he's like, this is a failure, and just kind of like kicks him out.
Okay.
And decides to try again, and wound up making the barbarian, who's a little bit easier to control.
Like, I didn't mean to make somebody with so many oaths and restrictions. I just want somebody to swing an axe real hard.
So it was just like there were too many questions about about what he is and how he came to be, or whatever. We gotta workshop that amongst the group as to how that all came to pass.
Yeah.
But he got kicked out and wound up being, I guess, sold into like the gladiator pits, which
Oh,
is
okay.
the paladin got his start. But it's just like, this is really going to be an interesting dynamic to have this. I made both of them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great. That is, you just nailed it. It's interesting. It'll just create interesting situations in the game. I was thinking of earlier when we played in Just Quest 2. So many things in that had their origins in the first campaign. So that was kind of an interesting thing. But also the villain was supposed to be the villain. Beat him in the second session, but his origins, like I like tying at least one player character to like a villain or just something like that. Like, so Steven's character and him had been at school together. They both went to like magical culinary school and stuff. So just any to me, I guess, like any time out, like pre-game stuff, you can come up with the origins to inform the game you're to play. Just creates interesting situations for players, and you don't have to focus on it all the time. Like in your game, it's like, I'm sure that won't be like a constant thing. Like, well, maybe it will, but it's like, it just might come up where it's like, well, that's pretty, that's interesting. And it might create like a conundrum for the players, or it just gets people immersed, like, and engaged more when they feel like they have like a more fully fleshed out character with an origin like that.
I like the, you mentioned the connecting the BBEG to a character. Connecting it to a character or to the story, I think works really well.
Yeah.
When you connect
or any NPC, I guess, we can broaden it up.
Well, when you make those kind of connections, you have the ability to kind of see what things can kind of be established and allow people to figure out how much they want to, I guess, buy in on what's there. And, if they want to dive deep and explore those relationships and see what they already know and see what they can figure out, it can be a lot of fun. But the onus is on the player. If they don't decide, oh, well, do I know anything, or can I use anything that I can exploit? Well, then it's kind of there as a backdrop that isn't there. So you really do have to, as a player, see what things can be exploited. Not exploited, but what
I know.
You can pull out, if you ask the right questions, and it can be table talk, even if you're not the intelligent one in the group. The group can be like, hey, wait a second, you know him? What do you know about him?
Right.
And
that's a great point. It can be like a effect more than just the two people directly involved, like you just said. It's like maybe other characters learn that, and they're like, whoa. It's like, why do you know that guy? Or
table intelligence absolutely is a thing, and it can be fun. And this is as we do here at Divergent Path, the sharing and not just keeping everything a secret, can be incredibly helpful and fun. If like, oh, I've been sitting on this secret for 9 sessions, it's like, we could have used that 5 sessions ago.
I always think that's weird player behavior. I'm often just like plumbing just forums and things for like ideas, and just see what people that play RPGs are like. And that's a common thing I see, or I'll say not uncommon, where it's just like, people have all these like cool like character secrets and everything. It's like, they're pretty moot unless you share them with other people. I don't get why you know what I mean? It's like, well, you have to find that space between like in the meta, where it's just like, yes, I get it, like, this to the character, this is really important, and they wouldn't want to reveal it, but it's like, you're just playing a game with other people, and it's like, if you have some nugget of gold that's going to make your game better and you never tell anybody, then what was the point? It's like it was meaningless.
in my Curse of Narcotis game, one of the players, and we had so many players come in and out of that game.
I even played it for like 3 years.
Well, yeah,
even I played in that game.
That's true. But like, I honestly, I cannot remember this gentleman's name, and it's going to bug me. But the guy who came with his girl and his kid, he played a druid,
Oh, you're talking about real early on, and one of them
Yeah.
died or something like that.
And he rolled on his background for Hermit that he came across this object that is supposed to, story.
Oh yeah, the discovery part or whatever.
Right. And it was referred to as the bloody rod. And it was, a red rod that seemed to like drip blood. And he had it from his first session, and he was in the game for a while. And like I had it connected to, the plot, from early on. And it was just like he wasn't doing anything with it. I'm like biting my fingers, like, can you just say something? Can you do something? And eventually, he's like, oh yeah, I have this thing. So like whenever
Oh yeah, because they were like blood cultists and stuff, right? So it was totally apropos. Yeah.
Eventually, every time they were on, they would take a long rest. Like he would sit by the campfire and he would pull it out in front of everybody else, and he would just kind of study it and see what he could figure out. And after a couple times of him doing this, somebody finally like turned and said, what you got there? And then it finally started, moving again. But it was just like,
it's funny. You mentioned earlier, not long after we started, like superhero origins, and certainly that is a big part of like how did you get your powers and stuff. But I think that applies to pretty much any RPG, because at the end of the day, when you're playing an RPG game, your characters are not average people, right? Even if you're playing like a Call of Cthulhu game where there's no powers, it's like there's still people that like diverted from normal life to like investigate the occult or whatever. So I really think it behooves all players to at least consider some parts of like where they came from, why they chose to do these things in life. And Xanathars actually has a really cool, real quick, section about developing your whole backstory, just little bullet points, like all the just charts you roll on. But I use those for Vent and those bastards, and I thought that was tremendously helpful. Like him growing up on the plane of fire was just something I rolled on there. And I was like, that's pretty sweet. I mean, he's a fire genasi. That makes sense to me, and it was really cool.
Now, I would say more importantly, of like origin, what is the moment?
Yes,
where that switch toggles from I'm gonna just do a normal life to I'm gonna go down this path. And sometimes it's a forced scenario. One of my favorite characters that I've ever role played alongside, I couldn't stand the character, but the way my friend Jim role played him was absolute dynamite. And that was Giles.
That's high praise. Oh yeah. I feel like I know that character, but yeah, I totally get what you mean. Where it's just like the character to the other characters would be annoying, but as a player, you're like, this is awesome.
Giles hated adventuring, but he loved magic and wanted to study. And his wizard mentor kept telling him, I'm not going to teach you anymore until you would go out and get some practical experience. We started playing this game back in second edition. And, every time I bring up Giles, it is with the fondness of memories. Yet I guarantee you every single character that, adventured with him could not stand it.
That's a tricky thing to pull off as a player. So kudos to that player. Yeah, because you said like you said like the players loved it. So it's really fun like as a role playing, because it's like you as a player like I don't dislike this character, so it's a fun place to play with your characters. Like yeah, I get it. They don't like him, but we like you in real life.
And this is the same character who as a level 1 wizard got set on fire, knocked unconscious, shoved into the river where he started drowning, so that he gets put out. It's like, oh my god!
Was that in 5e or was that a different? Was that
no? That was second edition.
Oh wow! This was a long time ago.
Yeah. Giles is absolutely one of my most heartfelt fellow adventurers from way back when, and he was he was there with my fighter cleric turned ranger druid or something along those lines, because he converted from second to third edition.
Oh, okay.
That's where that campaign spanned, and that was where Alana Pathwa, my eternal peace, my favorite magic item of all time that they've made.
Oh, that was that character's name. I thought it was the name of the sword. I messed that up in the newsletter.
Alana Pathwa was the name of the sword.
Oh, it was the name. Okay, I thought that was your character's name.
Tul Bathagonar was the undead slayer.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I love those guys. I loved those old weapons where it was like +0, but plus like 5 against giants or whatever.
It was a +0, +3 versus undead. And that aspect pissed me off to no end. But looking back, it was still such an amazing weapon, and I was thrilled.
Yeah. So we do have a few questions and things, but I know it's also halfway through, and usually on the first Monday you like to do that stuff.
Let's do the questions, and I'll get into stuff.
So Parks asks, have you all ever had a player or players join with the BBEG because it won them over inadvertently? I have not, which I'm thankful for, because it's a great story moment, but it kind of sucks for the, the players in the group. I have had, though, oddly enough, sort of the opposite of that, and I'll tie it into Origins. In my longtime Spelljammer campaign, one of the characters was a Warlock, and we rolled for stats, and I think his intelligence his wisdom was like 7 or something like that, 6. And so he decided that he just sort of was kind of dumb and decided to become a Warlock. He's like, oh, sure, I'll do it, And his patron was kind of developed into one of the baddies of the campaign. And the character became fearful of him. So he was he was always trying to change who he was so that his patron couldn't find him. So he, are you familiar with that stuff? I think it's called Fair's Risk or whatever. It's that strange energy of the Underdark.
Nah, but
it's in Out of the Abyss.
Sure.
And it has all these weird effects, and one of them is if there's a random chart and we rolled, and it was if you die in the next 60 seconds, you're reincarnated.
Okay.
And he rolled that, and he tried to he was all right, great. So he intentionally basically sacrificed himself to help them, but also thinking oh cool, if I'm in a new body, my patron can't find me. He did, of course, but it was just became a cool part of the campaign that just lied in that little nugget of his origin where he was just I just kind of stupidly decided okay, I'll take this power.
Yeah, Warlocks are always one of those things that's a little bit tougher to deal with when it comes to that kind of stuff. I've never had anyone switch sides willingly that I can recall, but I'm also talking about over 30 years of
that's
shaped dice.
I can't say it never happened, but
I've done games where there's been PC on PC type scenario. One of my earliest games, which actually was in part with Nate the Nerdarchy from way back when. This was before Dave and I had started gaming together.
Oh wow!
Or sorry, before Dave and I started gaming together regularly.
Yeah.
But because it was, anyway. But we had a strange dynamic. There was the DM and there were 3 players. I was on the good side. My friend Nick was on the evil side, and then Nate was most of the time on my side, but every once in a while he would dance in the middle, or the one time that we finally killed Nick for good, and he's no, I can't let that happen, and he resurrected him. My character, complete warrior. Nate, in true Nate fashion, he was a wizard cleric psionicist. So by the time my character was single class 20th level, he was 18, 17.
Wow.
So way more powerful than anybody else. And it was just stupid, the amount of stuff that Nate's character could do. And when you start talking about combining spells in 2nd edition,
Yeah.
There was nobody who could master it like Nate could. So like, forget it. Like,
Yeah, well, he's real smart and analytical and good at figuring out all that noodly stuff for sure. Actually, I had an addendum to Park's question.
Sure.
I think that hasn't happened to me because usually I don't really plan out like villains. It's just like they emerge through the things that the characters like their actions and stuff. So usually they don't like the villain because like that's why they're the villain, because they don't like them. So it's unlikely that they would join them.
Yeah, I don't try and persuade them. That's never been a style that I've even really thought of doing, even though it happens in media all the time. I don't know why I haven't really considered it, but
like, where heroes join the villain.
Yeah, well, like where I as the villain am trying to persuade them.
Oh yeah.
My side, like I expect my players to be heroes.
Yes.
So like those are the things that I kind of look at.
Yeah, I'm the same way where it's just, and thankfully I've mostly played with, I mean, at least in longer campaigns, my friends, like they're like that too, where it's like, I don't want to be like I like being the heroic character who is going to do, go out of their way to help people and stuff like that.
All right. So I'm gonna get into some business right quick. All right. So I have not done any emails, even though I said last week that I might have done it, ahead of schedule. I every day last week thought, hey, I should get that done and be ahead. It didn't happen. So I pulled the list a couple hours ago. Emails have not been sent, but the giveaway winner is going to be Eberdeen and what that's going to be is from our awesome friends over at WizKids. The Icons of the Realms Essential Sidekick Pack and Player Character Pack.
Oh, man.
These are two-dimensional acrylic minis.
They make flat plastics or acrylics?
They do.
And WizKids is just killing it lately, aren't they? I mean, they have so many cool minis.
WizKids has got everything, and I'm actually going to get into a little bit of their new line in just a moment. But we've got Asian Monsters from Legendary Games. Seeds of Decay sampler from Hit Point Pack.
Oh, that's a great adventure. I've ran that. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm thinking that's Daryl, right?
That's Daryl and Hit Point Press, yeah. I got a copy of Strixhaven, a magazine of The Crucible. This is from cruciblemag.com. And the Dungeon Master screen, the Dungeoneers kit. I happen to, open up my copy and use that for the last couple of games, run here. So all of this is, one pack, one giveaway, decent chunk of stuff here. So Eberdeen, I will get in touch with you in the next couple of days, and all I need is your address, and that'll get sent out to you.
Do those real quick? Excuse me, I haven't seen them, but I know they have like the Dungeoneers screen and like the Wilderness screen. Do they have like different stuff like related? Like, does that one have like stuff related to dungeoneering?
So there's a little bit, the inside is a little bit different on the normal screen. But this also comes with a dry erase sheet, actions you can take in combat on one side, and a numbered grid for drawing dungeon maps on the other. 36 geomorph cards, perfect for dealing a random dungeon layout with interlocking sections, and 27 reference cards to track conditions, initiative, and more.
Oh man, I didn't know it had all that. That's pretty sweet.
And then there's like a paper, like a cardstock paper box that you can fold into place to put those cards into.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, the Dungeoneers kit is a pretty cool.
Yeah. Real quick, I think CF in the chat. I don't. Apologies if you're a frequent viewer. It seem familiar to me, but we do these giveaways every month, and everybody who's subscribed to our newsletter and supports us on Patreon, don't tell anybody that, is eligible to win. They're usually, we say they're at least $50 retail value, but it's usually quite a bit more than that because we have a tremendously huge giveaway pile that's always growing. So we give that stuff away every month.
Yeah, the pile is pretty decent at the moment. Anymore, I say it's probably $100 or more, and we've done everything up to like an MSRP of over $600.
Yeah,
so it's crazy.
Yep.
Every month, and you can get in on that. And if you support us on Patreon and sign up, you got 2 chances.
Oh, is that right? Oh, cool. So yeah, go do that, CF.
All right. So the next order of business is the fan game of the month. This time it's going to be with yours truly, and I'm going to stick to our staple last Sunday of the month. It's going to be March 27th, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard. And I draw the name of 10 lists, a list of 10 names, email them all out, and the first 5 people to respond that are willing and able to do it, get in. So the name, I got a number of things that are just a first name. So if you happen to share a first name or you signed up with only a first name, be on the lookout for an email. But we got Rich Osborne, Lady Tempest, Anastasia Wilford, Len Cole, Iranwil, Eliun, Roger Walters, Hal Weatherford, Gabe, and Jacob.
Nice.
So, I will be sending that email out, and it's probably going to be sometime tomorrow. But
those names are drawn from the same pool, right? So yes. Newsletter subs and Patreon. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
So you got, in order to get into the fan game, you kind of have to like double lock in.
Yeah, that's right.
So like you sign up for the newsletter, and then there's like a separate list.
Yeah.
Just to the other stuff.
Opt into those things, right?
And then I just, every month I get the updated list from Dave, get that all kind of, pulled together. I use a random number generator to go through all the options, and then I just put it on a list.
Nice.
So that's that part. The other thing is, and I kind of mentioned, a little teaser about WizKids. They've got the the pre-painted minis, the blind purchase packs. You can buy just the unpainted or the already painted minis in the completely open packs. They've got the the flat plastic, hard acrylic minis, but
those are so good.
They're going in another direction as well as everything else that they're doing. So they've recently released, or it's coming out, I don't know which, thing called frameworks.
What's that?
The way these things work is it's what they're referring to as their custom build your mini with what's here. So with this Drider pack, it comes in a sprue, so it's unassembled, unpainted, but it's got extra bits. So like you get to choose your head, what weapon choices, what accessories you want to kind of put on it. Here, I'm actually going to jump off screen for just a moment and pull out, their little detail sheet.
That's pretty neat.
All right, so the WizKids team is very excited to be sharing the all-new Dungeons & Dragons Frameworks line of sprue miniatures with you. We cannot wait to hear what you think. The first wave features 32 player characters and monsters from the D&D universe, and every sprue allows for ultimate customization, so your figures can look exactly how you want.
Oh wow! So like like an adventurers pack might have like a bunch of, like you can sort of like make your like several things out of what's there.
So the way it works is they're individually done. So like you want a human warlock, you can select this. So like, okay, do you want a staff? Do you want a sword? Do you want it conjuring your familiar? Do you want it holding a dagger or a spell icon? Do you want your hair blowing in the breeze, or do you want to have that, ye old warlock style, like witch hat kind of thing going on? But like everything, every sprue has all of these extra pieces, which not only does that mean can you really make the mini that you want, but you're going to have all these extra things. And if you're like me and enjoy kit bashing, like these things then are like,
that's pretty cool.
All these extra pieces.
And you don't have to like file them off existing minis like people do with kit bashing. They're just already, that is a pretty neat idea.
So I got an assortment. I'm not going to show everything that's here, but I've got a Drider pack here, a human warlock. This pack is a ghast and a ghoul. So it comes with everything to either make 2 ghasts, 2 ghouls, or 1 of each mini, your choice.
Is there much difference between ghast and a ghoul?
I think it's
like visually.
I think it's all about how you decide to, put it together.
Which the ghast is like a nastier ghoul, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a white. I happen to grab a couple of undead.
Love whites.
You've got Dragonborn Sorcerer, so you can have, it's got a staff, or it's got a spell effect, or it's got a dagger. You can choose to, put the wings on or not. If you went with like, oh, let's make a draconic sorcerer. Um, the last one here is a human druid. So
Okay.
like you can have an owl in your hand, or you can have a staff. You can have a shoulder bag. You've got a lantern. It's got a dagger, a scythe. So lots of really cool options. You can
Do they like snap into each other? Or do you glue them together?
No, it's a cut it off the sprue and glue it into
So
place.
you could mix and match the different packs too.
Yeah.
Like if you had, oh, that's pretty sweet. Like if you like the head of the druid and the warlock body or whatever.
They're not going to be all positioned the same way, with a little bit of reshaping and possibly tooling. You've got the ability to really like, all right, I'm going to assemble something. So like for me, I'm really interested. Like I'm going to see what kind of ridiculousness I can kind of come up with by like, oh, well, if I take something monstery and something PC, see what I kind of.
Those are probably really great for people learning to paint too, because it's like you could just try like you just have like the arm and practice on that. It's like, okay, well, now I got some practice, and maybe you don't even use that one on the mini. It's like
right. Yeah, if you're looking to just, I want to do this one piece, like, there's all kinds of tools and things that are out there like, here, just hold this thing for me. And so
related to WizKids too, if anybody's listening, so my guest or my co-host here, Ted, often writes posts on the site kind of inspired by the WizKids mini, and they're not really like a promo. It's like, I mentioned it because the last one you wrote was just been super popular, and it's like, the just the ideas that they inspire for you, whether they're character ideas or adventures or just whatever. So those are a lot of fun. If you're curious, just go on our site and look up WizKids stuff. But there's tons of posts that Ted has written over the years.
I've been writing for WizKids, long before they started sending me stuff. So,
and even as just a reader and fan of RPGs myself, I enjoy reading those posts because they're not just like promo, PR copy. It's not just like, they're releasing this thing on this day, blah, 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 blah. Here's what it comes with. It's like there's meat to it. And I find inspiration just reading them myself. Like, oh, that is a cool idea. I'm going to try that next time I run a game.
That is my inspiration for it, is because like, how many times do people look at commercials and you've seen a commercial, you're like, okay, I'm just going to wait till my program comes back on, click skip ad, or, whatever it is you want to do. Whereas if I make something that is like thought invoking or something useful, oh, you've already got the stats for, an Nerdarchy. What else could this be? What might you be able to do with
That's
this?
A cool looking mini. Yeah.
I
find it especially helpful too for those big ones. Because it's like, how many times are you going to use that? But, maybe you find some other ideas like, oh, yeah, I don't, it's not just like the one time you throw it on the table and you never use it again or whatever.
And that's my thought pattern. That's why, like, when I did the Hellmouth.
The Tiamat thing.
Hydra, I'm not trying in any way, shape, or form trying to disparage WizKids. I love them. But if you're going to invest in Tiamat, like, do you really want to just put that on the table once?
Yeah.
Really? And how many times do you want to just go fight Tiamat? Like, what if you had something else? So, like, I came up with another really nasty creature that is not just a Tiamat. So, like, you could.
Yeah, those things could be like guardians of special places for high-level adventurers. And maybe even if they know they're going to face one at each, location. It's still cool, because then you get to use your Tiamat mini like 4 or 5 times. And it always looks cool.
It's a badass mini, and
that thing is really cool looking.
I'm looking that way because she's over there.
Yeah, right.
Kind of now towering over top of the the piddly little colossal red dragon.
Yeah. And that actually kind of dovetails into one of the few points I did have, which is just the origins of the ideas that we bring to our games, which I think we're both like, where it's like, dude, everything it can be the origin of something for your game, whether it's like, a character quirk, a monster, a plot, or even just some kind of vivid description. Like, I take many walks in the park that I think help me run just games better, because I just describe like what's around and the scale of things, and it's just more interesting. Like, I get a lot of my RPG ideas from things that are just totally not related to fantasy or fiction at all, just like real life stuff. And I find that's kind of often the better building block for me, because like I say many times, like they're relatable, like real life things, like people can relate to things that they know from real life. And then when you layer on the fantastical stuff, it makes it more interesting.
I completely agree. I pretty much, especially in my my ideas, newsletter stuff, like I'm always talking about drawing inspiration from whatever it is that I'm doing. I mean, when I look at, I previously was talking about He-Man. He-Man is in a fantasy setting, very magical. It's beyond the capacity of your typical D&D adventure, because these
Yeah.
like super heroic characters. And when
so he's the most powerful man in the universe. So
when you look at what He-Man is technically capable of, it's absolutely stupid, ridiculous. But you can take elements from that. But when you start taking a look at other things that I've watched, of how I recently binged a bunch of the the DC CW series, so like Flash and Supergirl and Arrow, and all of those are on different scales. Flash is fast and all his villains are fast, but there's an emotional connection. Look at Arrow, there's a lot of political stuff going on.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
Street level stuff going on. So that's some good urban things to look at.
Yeah, they're good. It's a good way of figuring out what is a reasonable or cool challenge for different kinds of characters, right? Like throwing a bunch of super fast people against Green Arrow probably wouldn't be that exciting, but you're like, well, yeah, he is a normal guy that's highly skilled. So, normal people who have political power or resources are great enemies for characters like that.
But when you begin looking at things like Supergirl technically can go as fast as the Flash, but they don't ever highlight the super, girl.
Yeah, super I always figured the super families just have an unspoken just let him win. That's all he does. We know we can all go faster than him.
So that's kind of your top tier.
Yeah.
Your magics, I'm going to destroy buildings kind of scenario. So you've got essentially Arrow at tier 1, Flash and tier 2 and 3, and then tier 4 with Supergirl, Superman, style stuff. So you can look at those things and try to figure out what kind of elements do I want to kind of build with.
That's a great point. That's a really good point.
So
those are applicable, they're sort of applicable to even D&D and stuff, where they're hey man, when you're 15th to 20th level, it's you gotta have some pretty awesome threats going. It's looking at those kind of cosmic superheroes are a good idea, because those people are threatening all reality or the entire planet and stuff like that.
So you look at, even though Flash is, I only care about, this one city, it's still, and maybe a little bit more here and there. But it's still all right, this is what's going on. And when you've got enough power to swing around, it means more things can happen.
Yeah.
Flash transcends time because he can literally run to the past, run to the future. So that's why I give him more middle ground scenario.
He's also very scientific. I've always liked that about the Flash, even in the comics, talking about kinetic energy, and a lot of his villains are science-based and stuff. Well, a lot of Silver Age heroes are, but he also is a scientist in real, is Barry Allen is smart and a scientist, so he knows how to apply his speed in different ways and things like that. One thing I wanted to, we're getting close to the end here. Speaking of origins, was sort of related to our upcoming rewards. So David mentioned, and today's video actually was about your Under the Dome campaign with the motorcycle gangs and all that stuff, and sort of that became the origin for our upcoming rewards, which we're calling racing chances, because it's kind of taking chances. But what really made that gel for me was putting the origin of the cycles and everything in something else that Nerdarchy also developed in the past, which was the Vargarians, and that really like clinched it for me. It was funny because we were talking about it in Slack, and when I mentioned that, I was like, "Oh, I hope that wasn't like Dave's campaign secret." And I just was like, "Hey, we should do this," because I remember when I said that, like nobody replied for a long time. I was like, "Oh crap!" But I just
honestly, to me, it wouldn't matter, much. I don't think that was an element that either of us were considering, or if Dave was, like, I don't.
Yeah.
He hit it well.
I think he was, but he wasn't like he said he was, but he wasn't like upset or anything that I mentioned.
To me, I wholeheartedly agree. Tying things to things of our world is awesome, and if if this thing is attached to that and has withstood, like, I wonder what has happened over those years, whether it be a century or centuries or an eon.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, I know what you mean. You guys sort of do like me, where it's like, oh, my adventures they take place on the same planet, but it's not like all codified and all that stuff. But it is interesting for players and for the GM too to be like, oh, like maybe I'll set this like in the future in this thing that happened. Like, especially if you're playing with the same group, but like in the same setting at a different time, like those kind of little Easter eggs are really fun.
Well,
that's the thing we did in the other campaign and stuff like that. I love that stuff.
In my campaign that I have now, we live on a boat. I have a small nugget, small Easter egg that I'm going to throw in there at one point in time. And it's literally only for Dave, and he may or may not pick up on it. But I'll see what happens, but it's going to be an amusing if he picks up on it. If he doesn't, not a big deal. But it's kind of fun. It's kind of interesting to kind of add those things because we do. You tend to game in the same world, and even though we've been doing this for decades, it's a lot of fun to kind of pull these things out and kind of rehash and talk.
Oh yeah, for sure. So we're getting close to the end. But Parks had a rules question.
For sure.
It's a quick rules question. Can any object be made an arcane focus for a character? Talking about 5th edition D&D here. I think raw, no, but in my games, I don't see why there would be a problem with that. I mean,
so the only stipulation I would have is like most things that fall outside of the typical, staff, wand, orb, the subclass gets you something. So like the scribe can use a book, the blade singer can use the weapon.
I think the genie can use their vessel.
That's a warlock though, right?
Yeah, but I mean they still
yeah. So like I was thinking I went and for a moment.
Yeah, holy symbols.
So like
what is a druid's thing? Is
so they've got like,
is it just called a druidic focus?
Got a druidic focus, you've got a sprig, you've got a totem.
Yeah.
You can use a staff, you can use holy symbol. Like druids and clerics have some overlap, but druids have extra stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you have something special, or you make a magic item that is a focus, then boom, that covers it. The only thing that I would say, like, check with your DM.
Yes. And
as long as it's not a weapon, it should be fine.
And also, I would clarify, or at least in my games, if I, like in your Dungeons and Delving game, I believe Tabitha's, it was her talisman, which was shaped like a sword, of course. But, I would say in my games, if somebody was like, oh, can I use like, I don't know, just pick a baseball or whatever is their thing. It would be like that ball, not like you could just, or like a rock, if somebody's like, can a rock be my focus? Like, sure, that rock, but it's not like if you lose it, like, oh, I'll just pick up a rock off the ground. No, that's my focus. I mean,
yeah.
Like, so in the sense, basically what I'm saying is like visually, I don't care what you want to think it looks like, but it's not like any mundane object.
Yes. If you have something that doesn't fall into this is a focus, you have spent time and energy in creating that specific item to become a focus, and it is imbued with a signature to you that you can then use it. And it's not a quick process of just pick up a frickin' something off the ground. and use that.
Right.
Well, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, they still, even the I believe like the staff. I mean, they all cost like 25 gold or something like that. Like in a staff focus, like you could use it as a quarter staff too, but it's not like any quarter staff is a spell focus. It's a special kind of staff. You could just also hit people with it. So I hope that I hope that helps answer your question. The flash talk maybe went to use a pocket watch as a focus for chronomancers. Yeah, see, like something like that, I would totally be. Yeah, of course, that makes total awesome. Like a clockwork soul sorcerer, that would be cool. Also,
you tell me something that makes sense, and I'm going to allow it as long as it's not like broaching into, oh, can I use a shield or can I use a sword? That
I can tell you this as a longtime GM, and I would suspect I would probably speak for all GMs, where it's just like there's a distinction. If you want to make some kind of character change because you think it's cool or just fits your character more, great. But if you're just doing it to like game the system and like I said, like, well, now I could just pick a rock up, it's like that's just bullshit and stupid. I mean, come on. Like on one hand, you're telling me like I'm really excited about this character and I think this will really help me like make it cool and role play cool. That's yes, I'm 100% for that.
Yeah. And if you're just trying to be like, hey, can I get one over on the GM?
Right.
It's drop my head and
or like, can I use a shield as my thing? That way I can have my holy symbol and whatever.
Well, the cleric can.
But yeah, that was a bad example.
Apply, their holy symbol to their shield. Whenever I do that as a cleric, I also have an amulet as a holy symbol. So I have two, just in case something happens to my shield.
And it makes sense from a character standpoint too. It's just like, yes, when I am in battle, I want my enemies to see like this is like my deities protecting me, but you're also just like a religious person, and it's not uncommon to, like Crusaders, they had crosses all over their stuff. I'm sure they also had a little chain with the cross on it too. I mean,
it's on my shield, it's on my shirt, it's in my.
I got a tattoo on my shoulder.
So I had other things that we could have found the origin out. I actually had a little bit of teaser in regards to the.
Yeah, go for it. We can go over a little bit. That seems like it went by real fast, didn't it? That hour.
Well, I mean, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So all right, I've got like a 6-paragraph kind of deal for Winda, so there's no way I'm going to read all of it. But I've like, okay, Winda is also known as Kiefer Greenleaf. He started off with being a nobody. Throughout most of his life, he had no ambition and always found himself in the middle, if not the bottom of the pack. He coasted his way through school without really applying any effort. Missing class to go do the things that he does. 5 years ago, something drastic happened. The supers disappeared, and Kiefer didn't really think much of it. Some years later, the typical dealer that he was working with had something new for him to try, and Kiefer's not one to turn something down, so he tried it.
He got superpowers from it.
That night, Kiefer, was so gone out of his mind that he smelled colors, tasted emotions, and saw time. Sometime later, possibly days, everything was a blur. He thought and moved quicker. Only this time with his smoke of choice allowed things to slow down enough to act normal. So over the next several years, the A-listers were gone, and when trouble began to happen, he thought long and hard. It took him a full hour to come up with an idea for a costume and try out his hand at becoming a hero should the opportunity arise.
Awesome. I didn't know those. There's some cool little tidbits for that. I actually considered that entire campaign, which we're playing tomorrow night on this channel. You should come back at 8 p.m. Check it out. I considered that entire campaign Nightlight's origin story, because I've played that character in other games as like an adult and everything like that. So it's fun in that way for me to think like, how would this affect like how I view him as a future, like an adult superhero? So it's been really fun.
The fun little tidbit, it comes into his name. It was not long thereafter that an eventful evening where a mugging was happening over a mall parking lot. The gun was gone with a wind before the assailant knew what was going on. As luck or fortune would have it, a person was recording, and Kiefer was caught off guard. When confronted with, "Who are you?" Kiefer replied, "I am the wind, duh." All the wind around and the poor quality of the camera. When the video was shared on the news a couple of days later, the anchor said, "It looks like we have a new hero in town, Winda." And as one not interested in causing a fuss over such a simple thing, the new identity's name stuck.
I like that. I didn't know that. That's pretty great.
So
that was a wonderful story to wind down this talk about Origins with a really awesome, unique superheroes origin story, which I enjoy. I love that game. So much fun.
It is a lot of fun. So come on back tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to come check out Nobody's Heroes, the Crime Ruiners. Always have to give that a sigh. But we have some fun characters and we have a blast with that particular game because Steven is a great GM. We'll get to see what new antics those crazy cats get up to.
I'm tier 3 now. That was exciting. I was like, "Ooh, man!"
I'm tier 3 as well. I gotta pick what thing I get.
You get 2. Yeah, actually, you get a total of 3 things because you get 2 tier powers, or maybe type, and 2 of one and 1 of the other. I remember I was like, "You get to pick 2? Yeah. All right."
I got 23, 22 and a bit, hours to kind of figure that out. Yep. But Dave will be back on Friday with the Friday live chats.
Yeah, he's been having some great guests. Last Fridays, I really enjoyed Brian Gray. Trying to go back and check that out as well.
So you guys know the deal. Until next time,
stay nerdy.